Have you ever wondered if you truly have hypothyroidism? Or if you really just have chronic symptoms of blood sugar fluctuation? Stay tuned to this video because I'm going to educate you, Tut's not, but I'm going to, on possibly what's going on with your physiology. And maybe you just have chronic blood sugar handling issues and you truly do not have hypothyroidism. Alrighty, what up everyone? This is Josh Room from East West Healing and Performance. This is Tut. Tut, say hello. He's sleeping and doesn't want to be bothered. Right, Tut? Sitting in my living room, thought I'd change up the scenery. It's a beautiful day outside. Been getting ready to do this YouTube for a long time because, I want to preface it with this. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor. I don't play doctor. I'm not telling you you have hypothyroidism. I'm not telling you you don't have hypothyroidism. I'm not telling you to take a medication or a supplement, and I'm not telling you to go off your medications or supplements. So that's my disclaimer. What I'm here really to do is just educate you. I got some of my notes up here. Really just educate you and talk to you about what we're seeing out there based on our experience of studying functional physiology, working with clients all over the world, and what we're seeing with people that are diagnosed with chronic hypothyroidism. Now, think about this. Everything we're trying to do in life is about balance, right? It's about balance between the hormones in our body, the internal and external environment. And mainly it's a balance between what we're actually building up and what we're actually breaking down. We're always trying to build stuff up and we're always trying to break stuff down. Everything is a stress. Everything. The only way to eliminate stress is if you actually die. And that's really not an option probably for most of you. But think about it. Exercise is a stress. But if we live healthy, we eat, think, breathe better, we're actually to buffer the stress of exercise. Being excited can be a stress. So we want to find the balance of that in our life. Now, most people that are coming to see us, or I shouldn't say see us, Tut's maybe saying hi, is they're coming to see us in a state where they're constantly being broken down. They're in the state of survival mode. They're essentially in that sympathetic kind of running from a lion state all the time. They have insomnia, high blood pressure, they're gaining weight, they're edemic, they have hormone issues, they have no energy, they have a foggy brain, they're dizzy, they have no energy. This is the most common thing we see with people. And, I don't want to say this is a good thing, but it's not a bad thing because if your body didn't compensate, your body wouldn't show you these things or these symptoms and you essentially die, right? So it's your body compensating to all the stress in your life because you're not meeting the demands to actually modulate those stressors. Now, I'm going to talk about pulse and temp a little here, and I've talked about it before. I'll put some of the YouTubes in the description of the video down below. But we use body temperature and pulse to really get a look at what is going on at the cellular level. And this was actually coined, I don't know what the word is, by Broda Barnes, MD, and he really did a lot of great work and pioneering work in studying the thyroid. And you're really looking at the cell level with body temperature and pulse, you're looking at, number one, are my cells using glucose and thyroid hormone efficiently to produce carbon dioxide and water, and CO2 in water, basically. So what you're really looking at is, are my cells working efficiently to produce energy? If they're not, you're basically using free fatty acids, and remember that as I go through this, from tissue breakdown, from being in that catabolic state, which actually has an inhibitory effect on body temperature and pulse, where you see a low body temperature and a low pulse. And that's very key as we work through the notes of this education series. Now, there's many diets out there, but we could say that most people that come to see us are actually on a low-carb, high-protein, fat diet. Or we could say they're on a high-carb, low-protein, low-fat, kind of the sad American diet. They don't know what they're doing. Okay? Either way, you're seeing blood sugar handling issues. You're seeing a hypo versus hyperglycemic issue. Now, some people that come to see us are on the low-carb diet. They're doing ketosis, or they're doing the paleo diet, maybe really extreme paleo diet, and not following it properly. The problem with this is their goal is they're trying to lower insulin because they think insulin actually leads to weight gain. The problem is this is very dangerous. Actually doing this long term can lead to diabetes. It's been shown, it's been seen, I've actually seen it with clients. And if you study the work of Dinah Schwartzbein, she talks about that a lot in her work as well as Philip Young. That's why in diabetes you have diabetic ketoacidosis. Now that's the extreme of ketosis, but it's called diabetic ketoacidosis for a reason. They can't regulate their blood sugar because they're not producing enough insulin. So doing those types of diets long term are actually quite dangerous because our body needs glucose It's how the body works. It's how the central nervous system works. It needs glucose. Our cells need glucose to produce energy. Now, the problem with these types of diets is you're basically lowering your carbs because you want to lose weight. And you think it's healthy because you think carbs are bad. Well, of course, bad carbs are bad, but if we're eating fruits and roots in relation to proteins and fats, it's really not that bad, right? Everything is about balance. Now, the problem with this type of diet is you see high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. You see low insulin levels, of course, people lose weight, but they lose weight at the expense of damaging their metabolism. What I'm saying is this pushes their body into what's called gluconeogenesis. And the body actually releases cortisol and adrenaline to break down its own tissues, its proteins, which release free fatty acids, which inhibit body temperature and pulse. And in these situations, you usually see low body temperature and pulse. To compensate for you not getting or meeting your metabolic needs with taking in carbohydrates. So this is a very dangerous diet. You're playing with the normal physiology of the body. So the body is in the survival mode, this running from a lion mode all the time because of the way you're eating. So now your goal to become healthy is actually becoming unhealthy because how you're eating is becoming a huge stress. Yes, you're losing weight at the expense of damaging your metabolism. So you're actually losing weight because you're in a catabolic state and the body is actually eating itself. It's that simple. You can't deny it. Like I said, low insulin and high cortisol equals fat loss. High insulin and high cortisol equals fat gain, which I'll talk about. Now with that, you typically see, as I mentioned, a low temperature and low pulse. You can see a high pulse over time if this is done chronically, but a lot of times you see low temperature and low pulse. You see high blood pressure. You see hyperglycemia and things like that over time. That's the short of it. Now on the other end of it, we see the high carb or the SAD, or they're not really doing any type of diet. They don't know how to diet. They're just eating food sporadically, 2 meals a day, 1 meal a day, which we see very common. They don't really have a clue what's going on. And they'll fluctuate between hypo and hypoglycemia, but they're really fluctuating or really staying in the hypoglycemic state. This is all going to make sense when I get to body temperature and pulse because it literally comes together, because the bottom line is both are exactly the same when it comes to healing the system. Now, the bottom line is with these people, they're not eating enough to meet their metabolic demands throughout the day. And with this, you typically see high insulin and high cortisol to compensate for the sporadic amounts of food coming in, poor food frequency, and the excess intake of a carb, or one day the low intake of a carb, or high protein, high fat. So it's very sporadic. It doesn't make any sense. You typically see high insulin and high cortisol, which leads to weight gain. And that's the difference between these two types of diets. That's why people on the SAD diet typically gain weight. Now, we typically see fluctuations of pulse and temps through this. A lot of the times, and this will make sense, they wake up with a low temp and pulse, and as they eat, their temp and pulse actually come up. But they're still in gluconeogenesis throughout the day because they're not meeting their metabolic demands. The body says, well, if you're not meeting them, I have to compensate to meet your demands, because if you don't, you're going to go into a diabetic coma and die. So you do release the adrenaline and you do release the cortisol. And it's been shown by people like Philip Young from his book, I think it's called Guardian Thyroid Health or something like that, Philip Young, MD. He said that people that are hypothyroid actually compensate 30 times with adrenaline to meet their metabolic demands, because adrenaline actually mobilizes stored glycogen from the muscles and from the liver to meet our body's demands. But if it's not there, we're going to release excess cortisol. We're going to push ourselves further into that gluconeogenesis state. Now, enough of the science, enough of the complexity. I want to simplify it for you. If we start to put that together, what does it mean? What am I really talking about here? We use body temperature and pulse. And what we see is this. And this is actually based off the work of Broda Barnes. Part of it, and part of it is based off the work of our experience, what we see and what we're correlating with basic human physiology. Now remember, the adrenal glands regulate the availability of fuel because of the glucocorticoids they release. The thyroid regulates the burning of the fuel. If you don't have enough fuel, which is glucose, you're not storing enough glycogen because you're hypoglycemic, what's going to happen? You're going to release adrenaline to meet those needs, but because you're breaking down tissues, you're going to inhibit thyroid production, and because you're not storing glycogen, you're going to inhibit thyroid production because the liver requires glucose to convert T4 thyroid hormone to T3 active thyroid hormone. So you're going to see a deficit, and you're going to see a low body temperature and pulse. Lack of fuel shuts down the conversion of T4 to T3. Now, typically, this is my point here. This is a big point. Philip Young talks about this. And Broda Barnes talks about this. And I honestly, in 12 plus years of doing this, I don't care if someone's diagnosed with hypothyroidism. It's great. I don't care if they've done a full thyroid panel. I don't care if they've just done TSH. It doesn't matter. I mean, the bottom line is, if you want to know if you have hypothyroidism, you need to get a full cholesterol panel workup and a full thyroid panel workup, not just TSH and not just cholesterol. You need to get a full panel workup as well as take body temperature and pulse. So Philip Young and Broda Barnes talk about this. People with true hypothyroidism will wake up with a low body temperature and pulse. Anything below 97.8 is low, and we say low pulse, we'll say 40s, 50s, things like that, okay? A lot of people think that's healthy. It's not. It's a slow metabolism. The engine is cold. The engine is not burning. It's not burning fuel. And what happens is, as they eat throughout the day, no matter what they eat, how they eat, even if they're working with us, let's say, and they're beginning 4 to 5 to 6 meals a day, they're eating healthy metabolic foods, they're getting lots of calories, and after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, their temperatures and pulses don't budge. They're still waking up at 96.6 and their pulse is 50. It's 96.6 or 7, 8, close to that range, 55, close to the pulse that they woke up at their baseline, never changes. That's a true sign of hypothyroidism. There's no fuel and there's no burning of the fuel, okay? So what I'm saying is, I rarely have ever seen that, even with people that are diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Now, people that have functional hypothyroidism, or what I like to call, or we like to call, hypometabolism, or someone that's hypometabolic, what you see is this, and this makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense with blood sugar handling issues, makes a lot of sense with based off how they've eaten in the past, makes a lot of sense with the science of the adrenals regulate the availability of the fuel, and the thyroid regulates the burning of the fuel. They'll wake up with a low temperature and pulse, right? What happens is, as they eat throughout the day, what happens? Their pulse and temp go up. Why? Because now there's fuel available, and the adrenal glands can kind of quiet down a little bit and not release hormones that inhibit the body temperature and pulse through gluconeogenesis. And now the fuel is coming in, we're storing it, and now we have the fuel to convert thyroid hormone, so now we're burning the fuel. So what we commonly see with people that are functionally hypothyroid is they wake up with a low body temperature and pulse, and as they eat throughout the day and they're using food as a supplement, and they increase their calories and they work on their food frequency and the amount and quality of digestible metabolic foods, we typically see body temperature and pulse go up, which show us that people truly do not have, I shouldn't say this, but maybe you're diagnosed with this, but people truly don't have thyroid issues. What they really have is issues with the availability of the fuel because they're not taking in the right foods and the right balance to meet their metabolic needs, and they're not burning fuel. And when they do, which is food, when they take this food in, you actually see a shift in body temperature and pulse, which shows us that the adrenals are working fine, the thyroid's working fine. It is the lack of food that's coming in from being hyper or hypoglycemic that's the issue. So the bottom line is this: most people that are being diagnosed with hypothyroidism based on our experience are truly in a state of having chronic blood sugar dysregulation. So hopefully that makes sense as we go through this. Listen to it again. The bottom line is, if you're taking in the right foods and you have the fuel, the thyroid's going to burn it, and you're going to see a change in body temperature and pulse. Thanks for tuning in. I'm out of here.